every generation that has come along, there have always been those few memorable titles that, beyond being great experiences, really make the player put down the controller and truly consider their actions and the implications of the story. 2007's release of Bioshock by then 2K Boston, which was meant to be a spiritual successor to the beloved System Shock series, stands out as one of those few. Your journey to the decimated city of Rapture at the bottom of the Atlantic was a roller coaster ride full of self-discovery, whose plot twist is easily one of the most talked about moments in video games since the dawn of achievements. 2K Marin would go on to make the sequel to The Adventure Under the Sea, but the newly redubbed Irrational Games had, dare I say, loftier plans for the franchise. You've heard us talk a lot about Infinite on this site, but it's time to give the game a final review. So here's the question: does Bioshock Infinite rise to the occasion? Here's what I think. At the 1893 World's Fair, one of the many inventions and concepts shown off was the floating city of Columbia, a tribute to the idea of American exceptionalism. Built by Zachary Comstock, the United States government commissioned Columbia to travel throughout the world to demonstrate the rising power that America was becoming. But then something happened. During a routine trip to China, an anti-imperialist movement attacked, taking American hostages. The event, known today as the Boxer Rebellion, saw Columbia fire upon the Chinese in retaliation, an act in defiance of Washington's orders that resulted in the deaths of hundreds. Columbia then seceded from the Union and disappeared into the heavens. 19 years after the Boxer Rebellion, former Pinkerton agent and private detective Booker DeWitt, an experienced combat veteran of the Battle of Wounded Knee, is approached by a man who is willing to solve Booker's gambling problems. Booker's task: infiltrate the city of Columbia, retrieve a girl named Elizabeth, and bring her safely back to New York. Our story begins on a stormy night at a lighthouse off the coast of Maine, and from here, Booker is on his own. As for Booker's character specifically, I have to say that he's a very interesting one. Just by the way he speaks and the dreams he has throughout the game, you immediately get the feeling of a downtrodden, tired man.
Who's there?
The choices he has made throughout his life have really worn him down, and you can easily glean that this last chance to clear his debts is also an opportunity to make up for the wrongs he's done in his life.
Told you.
Booker is clearly a very well done character, and his man on a mission mantra begins to change in a very far more attention drawing way once we are introduced to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, without a doubt, is easily one of the best parts of Bioshock Infinite. Though she's been locked away in a tower all her life, Elizabeth is anything but a damsel in distress. She's very intelligent, remarkably introspective, and, beyond almost every other aspect, a wonderfully innocent person. The first half hour of your time with Elizabeth is simply adorable, as she gets to experience a world outside her cage for the first time, enjoying all the marvelous things life has to offer before being shown the cruelty of man, and her natural violence as the police and Comstock's agents attempt to recapture her. Her innocence is simply wonderful, and serves as a rather fantastic omega to Booker's depressed, guilty alpha. Elizabeth's part in Infinite almost comes across as a coming-of-age tale, as she is torn from the innocence of youth in her tower and must grow and adapt to the terrible truths that exist within Columbia. She is a wonderful character, and easily one of the best female protagonists in years. Though Columbia itself is a wonderful backdrop for the game, the similarities between this city in the sky and the fallen underwater utopia make the case for the story being a continuation of the Bioshock formula in comparison to the character's evolution. Whereas Rapture was a caricature of a society built on the progression of science and the abandonment of religion and moral values that held the progress back, Columbia is the philosophical, not to mention physical, polar opposite of Andrew Ryan's dream. A society built on religion that seeks to stem the growth of science and social progression. Rapture's downfall came at the hands of a working-class uprising, and so too does Columbia's, albeit that the first game's revolution occurs well before the player even gets to the lighthouse, and Columbia's civil war occurs during Booker's visit. The themes are similar, but there's not enough difference between the two to say that Infinite is truly that different from Bioshock. Though I won't go into any specific spoilers for the game, I will say that Irrational put together a rather brilliant yarn. The ending alone makes up for many of the game's story-related flaws, as it leaves you remarkably satisfied, and without the need for sequel baiting. It stands to wonder just what Irrational has planned for the game's downloadable content coming later this year, especially given just how much we didn't get to see, as well as the content that was lost in transition between the early demonstrations and the final product. But for now, let's jump right into the gameplay. First up, the player's weapon selection. As before, you will find a variety of weapons, such as pistols, shotguns, machine guns, and heavy explosives to deal damage to your foes. What you will take note of, however, is the game's limitation of your inventory to 2 weapons at any given time. This encourages more scrounging in the environment and should, theoretically, force the player to experience all the weapons to be found in the game. The way the game is structured with ammo and weapon placement, however, never stresses the player to switch out your firearms, allowing you to almost maintain the same pair of weaponry throughout Infinite, unless playing in the game's infamous 1999 mode. Much like the plasmids of yore, Bioshock Infinite contains various powers the players can accumulate called vigors, powers that are paced throughout the game and are powered by salts. The variety of vigors to find are limited to only 8, and despite the ability to chain different vigors together for powerful combos, the diversity is a bit disappointing. The vigors also do not seem nearly as offensive as they were previously, as they all seem designed to stun enemies with the explicit goal of giving you time to take them out with your weapons. Much like the vigors, tonics have been replaced with interchangeable gear, and it is this part of the gameplay that is the least executed in my opinion. Players will be able to find gear throughout Columbia, and can wear 4 of them at any given time so long as the gear you wish to wield fits into a slot for your hat, shirt, pants, and shoes. One of the first problems with the gear is that what you find is predetermined for each slot you can wear, meaning that you are unable to make a proper build to your exact specifications. Another issue pertains to the variety of gear to be found. While there is a decent assortment, most of the gear is very specific as to its capabilities, and only a select handful feel multifunctional. More often than not, you'll find yourself disappointed with what you find and simply taking it, never to equip it. In short, gear is probably the most underdeveloped portion of Infinite, and I can only hope that with the game's upcoming DLC, that we'll see a fix to this. While the vigors and gear disappoint, Elizabeth once again makes up the difference and turns things around. Though one would suspect that Bioshock Infinite is just one big escort mission, and to be fair that is a bit of an apt description, Irrational has made Booker and Elizabeth's journey one that's more of a mission for her than it is for you. Elizabeth is never subject to combat, and never gets in his way. When outside of combat, she will search actively throughout the environment and point out items of interest such as lockpicks. It is in the combat, though, that you really see her come into her own, as she actively aids Booker by handing him health, ammunition, and salts, should you be getting low on any of them. Elizabeth doesn't just aid you with items, however. Her powers come into play too. Throughout the game, you'll notice spots in the world called tears, which highlight items found in another reality. Elizabeth has the unique ability to open tears and bring these things into our world. Everything from a piece of cover to automated weaponry can be brought into the world, and, if done right, can shift a fight in your favor very quickly. Another great highlight of the game comes in the form of the skylines. This method of cargo transportation between the various sections of Columbia makes for a rather exhilarating way to change up the pace of combat, as you can zoom in, out, and around enemies where you see fit. Skylines can also be used as an attack, as you can leap off and strike enemies, sending most normal ones flying and potentially off of Columbia entirely. They add a rather wonderful amount of verticality to the combat, though I'm sad to report that they feel quite underutilized, nowhere near the amount of usefulness seen in the demonstrations in 2010 and 2011. One final note that I feel must be mentioned is the quality of the AI. Now, in the case of Elizabeth, you do see a strong quotient of intelligence behind her design. She'll never get in your way, she almost always follows you wherever you go, and the player will never have to worry about encountering path issues. Heck, I think that Elizabeth's ability to move at the exact same pace as the player is one of the most wonderful parts of the AI, as all too often, games feature NPCs that run at their own pace without consideration of the player's movement. Anybody who's played a Call of Duty game knows exactly what I'm talking about. What works for Elizabeth sadly doesn't seem to translate to the enemy AI at times. Enemies rarely make use of skylines in order to attack you, save for those focused on melee weaponry, and they seem specifically programmed to stay within specific combat arenas. This means that if you retreat into a previous room or building, you'll notice some situations in which they don't follow you at all, instead staying put and making for easy cannon fodder. The average first-person shooter these past several years have been a droll slab of browns, grays, and blacks, and only recently have we seen this winter of discoloration finally begin to thaw. Bioshock Infinite really marks this new spring for color palettes by presenting what is easily one of the best swaths seen in years. Textures are as bright and vibrant as one could want, and the opening hour of the game really shows off a fantastic looking world. It should be noted, however, that the game looks damn near stunning on the PC, and that particular platform is the best way to experience the game. If you are stuck with a console, however, you needn't fear, as both the 360 and PlayStation 3 versions are quite good looking. The sound design for Infinite is equally as attractive as the visual design. Courtney Draper does a wonderful job as Elizabeth, and Troy Baker's portrayal of Booker is just as good, making for a rather brilliant pair. Weapons sound powerful, ambient noise aids rather well in giving the world character, and the music is enthralling and engaging. There isn't a single item in the game's audio design that hurts the ears, and everything from the cries of the songbird to the ambient chanting of Comstock's followers never gets old. Presentation-wise, this game's design is fantastic, and clearly comes from minds that know how to imagine a world unlike so many others. At the end of the day, Bioshock Infinite is a rather fantastic game. Irrational Games had a lot to live up to when they were designing the successor to their 2007 masterpiece, and I believe it's fair to say that they more than succeeded. While some minor gameplay issues hamper things a bit, and the story's pacing could be a bit more uniform, these items are but a small scuff on a rather masterful work. While Infinite isn't exactly a heavenly experience to be had, it certainly soars so much higher than so many that have come before it, and no doubt will still be well out of reach for quite a few games to come. Well everyone, thanks for watching this prototype review. This is the first in what could be a whole series of video reviews for you guys to watch and hear our opinions from. Please note that we all share differing opinions about everything we play, so please check out our other coverage of Bioshock Infinite to hear more about what our other writers and our podcasters had to say. As always, if you enjoy the videos and like the content we provide, please consider subscribing. Be sure to tune in every night to 4pp.tv for our live streams and to stop by 4playernetwork.com to check out the latest news, articles, and opinions that we want to share with you guys. So, again, thanks for watching.